What's up, everybody? Welcome to We Have Cool Friends, the cool show where we interview our cool friends about the cool things they're doing. I'm Greg, this is Andrea, and that's our cool friend, Luke Smith. Yay! And you're into it, just like that.
Yeah, and there we go. Oh, way to go.
Bring that energy up, you know what I'm talking about? I hope you should have had the donut.
The donut or the coffee.
Yeah, you're
really.
just
But
a
just
coward
pass on
over there,
both. I'm leaning down before the product launch.
Oh, okay.
Balloon up, and now you start to lean. You know, for me, it's lean down a little bit. Leaning down.
Yeah. You look better. You know what I mean?
I have looked better.
Yeah, exactly. That's how we all, I think you and me both look all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
just,
people, you're looking better. Thank you. Not good yet. Not good. I haven't hit that quota. Looking better.
Okay.
Luke, of course, you're from Bungie. You work on a game called Destiny 2.
I have.
What's your title there nowadays?
Oh, gosh. I think it's just game director, something like that.
Because you're like the voice. You talk about it all the time now, you know what I mean?
We've tried some stuff recently that's led to some more communication this summer. We've we have our own voice now, and so we've tried to leverage that a little bit more.
You wrote a manifesto. I loved it.
It was, I think, pejoratively referred to internally as a screed. Some folks referred to it as a manifesto. I think Noseworthy, who's next to me at the office, was like, "I think that's how's your screed coming?"
When you wrote the director's cut, did you walk in like Jerry Maguire? You're like, I got it, nailed it.
No, I actually didn't realize what it was going to become.
Yeah,
because we had I think there was something around the like, hey, we're shelving Shadow Keep needs a little extra time. And I was like, I'll throw a little something out there, like an extra comm or something. It'll be, no big deal. Do like 4,000 words, call it good. That's not what happened. It became that giant 22-page long thing. I think when, that was not the. I did not think it was going to be that long. That was longer than any paper I wrote in college. And college was
you
so
cared
long
more
ago.
about this.
I did actually, yeah,
100%.
way more than Bleak House or whatever, right? Like, yeah, that Dickens lit.
As you both know, we have a show here called We Have Cool Friends. It's available all over the place, podcast, iTunes. One of the key components of it is the friend zone. And I usually like to keep the kind of funny best friends trapped in the friend zone, only let them out at the end of the show. But we've stumbled upon one. I want to let Colton out right now. Colton wrote into patreon.com/kindoffunnygames, just like you can. Oh, no, this is kind of funny, right? But it's games related. This is a big one. You're the first time we've ever had a game person on We Have Cool Friends. So I hope you got to bring the heat, all right? Colton says, the director's cut you posted recently isn't common tradition in the games industry. What do you think, why do you think that is, and why did you feel this was so important? Thanks for all you do, Colton.
I think the why is it that way is just the way communication's changing. Like communication has actually gotten shorter and shorter and shorter, and the takes get hotter and hotter. And it's like how quickly can you summarize a thing and either champion it or challenge it in 140 characters or less. And so with the director's cut, I wanted to go back to kind of where I felt like I got a bunch of my inspiration from a long time ago. And so it was these longer form communications from developers or rants back in the day or whatever. and think of it really like an open, honest communication that doesn't have anything like a TLDR in it. There's no like bullet points. Like at work, my emails are almost always just like short, crisp bullet points for expedience. But we wanted this to be something bigger that then people could read into and draw their own conclusions from and just be honest and tell people, hey, here's how we're thinking about this. Here's some stuff we've done. Here's things we're going to learn from and kind of project, where we're going to go.
Was everyone on board with that?
I think there was really good. I had a ton of help. Like the Bungie team and like all the folks working on the game day to day. Like, I went to someone like Lars Bakken and said, hey, let's talk about Reckoning. What do we learn? What are we learning? Yeah. And so because I want to weave this into it. There were folks who said, some folks in my near area were like, really? It's going to be how long? How long's the first one? You're only doing 2 parts, right? And I was like, yeah, I think I'm doing 2 parts. And then the second part became the third part, and it's, however long it ended up being. But I think afterwards, I think people saw some value in it, although the strategy was different than we've used in the past.
Well, that kind of transparency is so rare from large video game developers. Really, even indie developers sometimes don't have that much transparency with their audience. And for a group like Destiny players who've been following the game, since 2014, and really wanting to get peek inside what you guys have been thinking and kind of why you made some of the decisions you did. I think it was something that at least all of the people in my clan were incredibly excited to read and walked away from that going like, wow, this is super cool. I hope they do more of this.
Yeah, I hope that we do more of it too, but it's gonna be at a longer cadence. I can't do that once a month. That would be the amount of time it took.
Just come back to game journalism. It'll be great.
I think there are parts of that, like I think all the time about podcasting. I think it's super fun. It's like one of the I don't think it holds up. I don't think some of our work holds up super well 12 years later or whatever. But
times have changed.
Yeah, it's a little different, but it was still so much fun. And so, I just heard you talking about Weekend Confirmed, and I was like, oh shit, I haven't talked to Garnet in a while. He lives like adjacent to me across the bridge. I should catch up with him.
Yeah, he's great. Oh, Weekend Confirmed. Shout out.
Remember that?
To Garnet Lee and Jeff Kanata.
We're gonna take a walk down memory lane with Luke Smith, because this is We Have Cool Friends. We bring our friends here each and every week to talk about the cool stuff they're doing, the cool places they've been, the cool things they've accomplished in their life. If you like that, you should be part of the show. Patreon.com/kindafunny. You can go there, submit questions for the cool friends. You can get the show ad-free. You can support us like Patreon producers Al Tribesman and David Mintel. Mind Freak, dude. Sorry, thank you very much, Barrett. I appreciate you jumping on the mic to give me a secondary mind freak. And of course, we have our sponsors, MeUndies, Zebbit, and Upstart, but I'll tell you about them later. Luke, it's that thing. I think the one thing I've learned on this show is that people really enjoy the nutshell. Right now, how would you describe yourself as somebody who's listening to the show and doesn't know you?
Oh, boy. I'm the game director for a game called Destiny, and it's a game that has been around now for 5 years.
5 years as of today.
5 years, and it's brought to you by Bungie, the makers of a bunch of cool stuff. And I'm lucky enough to get to talk about it.
In the build up to, like, it's funny because you and I have been talking about doing this forever. We've been DMing about trying to podcast forever.
Yes, and it all started in 2017 actually. You DM'd me in November of 2017.
No, when I was playing.
The only time Greg was a Destiny 2 player.
Yeah, and it was actually in a dark time for the Rebellion. Like November of 2017 was a dark period for Destiny. People were frustrated with a bunch of the choices that we made on D2, and I've talked about this before, so I won't belabor it. But Greg, you actually sent me a DM that was like, "Hey man, I know there's a lot of negativity out there." I'm paraphrasing, but I just want you to know I think the game's really cool, and hang in there. And I was like, I never talked to Greg Miller before, and I just got this shout out of the blue. I was like, oh my gosh, wow, it was really touching, and that kind of set off a 2-year-long DM cycle that ended up with us here today.
A slow burn to get here. Well, yeah, I mean, to that point, I mean, you guys deserved it. I really enjoyed Destiny 2 at launch, and I know a lot of people did too, and obviously people continue to play it now and a whole bunch of different stuff. Is there criticism, is there critiques, and all these different things, and
totally.
what a player who has not stopped playing Andrea wants out of it versus a player who is Greg Miller, who is like, I platinum it, all right, on to the next thing. I want. Of course there are.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that we, Andrea and I, know so well, and I know you do from a different time period of games journalism. But the people who it's a vocal minority that talks, period, whether it be positive or negative. And so when it is negative, it can seem like the whole world is hating this thing, when in reality, millions of people are probably playing it, enjoying it, and not thinking that they need to sign on and do something. They're thinking about, oh, I've signed off, I need to go to the groceries, I need to go take care of the kid, I don't need to write into Luke Smith on Twitter and be like, hey, great job, everybody.
Or, hey, Luke, and then insert anything that you want to insert. I just had something I want to share with you.
Yeah. Okay. I don't know if you've thought about this. Yeah. This is what it is.
I like those. I like the I don't know if you thought about this.
Yeah?
Because
have you often not thought about it?
Sometimes, yeah, for sure. And sometimes you're like, oh, that's a really good idea. I wish I thought of that.
Do you have a specific story that you can recall? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot here.
I wish I thought of that?
Yeah.
I think at some point someone suggested a particular World of Warcraft fight that they thought would translate really well into a Destiny raid. And I probably remember thinking, God, I wish I thought of that. That's a good one. The mechanics would translate really well to the action game. Yeah.
It's not too late. You guys are going to make another raid at some point.
We actually, there's one coming out this fall. Yeah. We're going to keep making raids. People like them.
Destiny raids, man. You remember the first time we raided together?
I do. I loved it. That was the thing of, I honestly, as somebody who doesn't, or I guess at the time, Games of Service wasn't playing them that much, right? Like my raiding experience was DC Universe Online, which I put so much time into. But even then, I was always being Sherpa'd, right? Like somebody was always taking me around doing stuff. So when Destiny 2, the first raid dropped and we were jumping into it, I remember that thing of finishing that first night and walking into the bedroom and Jen woke up. She's like, how was it? And I'm like, we played for 6 hours and we lost and it was great. I had so much fun. Like it was so much fun.
Yeah.
It takes a special kind of masochist.
It does. It does. Yeah. We talk a lot about internally. We talk a lot about that feeling of, like the losing is actually kind of like the glue that's binding people together and like creating a bunch of the relationships that we think are really important in a game like Destiny.
Well, there's always the little incremental like, okay, wait, I'm doing more damage against these people. You guys should use this weapon. You come to me in the Shadow Realm or whatever. We had to shoot those goddamn skulls.
Oh, God.
You know what I mean? Yeah, you don't know God me,
all
right?
The futileness of like one person doing one little thing wrong and everybody had to do it so perfectly.
Okay. The stress I felt in the first part of it of running and jumping through the circles and calling them out and stuff, like, I remember like I was good at it and I never fucked it up, but I was always terrified.
You're talking about.
Yeah, I was always terrified that I was going to get in there and screw it up. Never did though, so power to me. But for in terms of today, right? Because where I was originally driving is we've been talking for years about coming on the podcast. We finally booked this date. Great. You tweet this morning, hey, it's the 5th anniversary of Destiny. It's kind of a life-changing thing. And I was like, oh, it's almost like we planned it when we did not plan it.
Actually, so Vanessa, who's our PR director and sitting over here very quietly.
Shout out to Vanessa.
She pointed.
She used to work on Marvel video games a lot. I remember that. Yeah, those were the days.
She pointed out when we booked this that it was on the anniversary, but I totally forgot. True story until this morning, and it's like, 6:45, and we're at the airport, and I'm like, looking at my mentions, and someone's like, oh, it's Destiny's, and I'm like, oh shit, is it? Because you have to double check everything on the internet, right?
Of course.
Maybe it's someone. Maybe they're like in Europe and it's really 9:10. So I look it up and I'm like, oh, it's 9:09. And I was like, oh shit, I should probably say something. And I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of perfect. Yeah.
So the question I was leading to is like
for the last 5 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, welcome to Kind of Funny. Was this on your guys' radar as a studio? Had you talked about it? Like, I feel like, especially now, your newfound independence, you're continuing to work on this game. You have so many ideas for where it's going. It's one constant release. It's not like you ship it and you walk away from it. Do you have time to sit there and go, oh man, 5 years, everybody gather around with your champagne glasses and a cake?
We're not very good at that.
Yeah.
Like as a company, one of the things that we struggle with at Bungie is like celebrating. Like we'll like have a launch event and things like that, but the culture of like celebrating or like looking back and being like, that thing we did is really good. That is just culturally not how we look at game. I wish we did. We would be happier if we did, but it's so often about looking ahead, or like we're like sharks, we have to keep swimming, and so like what's the next thing we're gonna do? Okay, like 2 weeks ago or last week, we were like planning the next few seasons, getting those through concept, and then we have another thing that we're working on, and so you're kind of just always looking ahead. And while like our fans and Destiny players are like, oh, Shadow keeps coming out, it's awesome, can't wait. And we're like, oh, but season 10, we're like onto the next thing,
Well, you got CJ on your team now. Make it his job.
CJ, that is not CJ's job. CJ's got plenty of important work to do beyond helping us pop the champagne.
Thank God you hired him and not Fran. I'm glad you said, you made the right call.
I mean,
there.
Fran would up the overall hair game of the studio just upon arrival.
That's fair.
That
that's 100%
he's
true.
a striking head of hair. Yeah.
So do you think about it as, man, it's been 5 years, or has it been way longer for you?
I think about it like, man, I'm in year 9.
Yeah.
Basically. So I started working on Destiny in 2010, right after Halo Reach shipped, and so I'm in my 9th year, heading on 10. And then the way I really think about it, to just bum everyone out, is that's almost a quarter of my life. So next year I'll hit year 10 and I'll turn 40. And I'm like, oh, it's 25% of my life. How do I feel about that? Like, how do you feel about it? And you're like, you can get really reflective about it.
How do you feel about it?
So we've had like, as we have people like come and go in the company, there's like one thing I do with almost all at least folks from the design team try to do before they go, which is talk to them about, would you put it on your tombstone? And so I really do think about the work that, I'm only speaking as Luke, not Bungie at all, just me as a human. I really do think about the type of work that I do in my life as, if I died, would I be excited to put this on my tombstone? And so, things like, husband, father would be there. Scarab Lord from World of Warcraft would be there.
Sure.
And I think, brought the raids to the first-person shooter would be there. And so when people are leaving to go to a new company or take a new opportunity, I always want to talk to them about, like, I just want you to go somewhere where you can put something on your tombstone, because that's really about purpose. And when I think about okay, it's a quarter of my life. I'm like, yeah, but there's some pretty cool shit in there. There's some stuff I'm like really proud of getting to be a part of. And there's not a lot of folks that I've met in the game industry who work on something and then are excited to go home and fucking play it.
Yeah.
Right? And so I still play the game all the time. I mean, like right now I'm just chilling a little bit before Shadowkeep comes out. I'm playing a little WoW Classic because Solstice turned off and I only completed one set of armor and I wrapped up the title.
Of course.
And so I was like, all right,
dork.
I can just, there's some games in, there's some games in September that I want to check out. And oh shit, now I'm playing this 15-year-old WoW Classic game. But it's
you and hundreds of thousands of other people. So.
Yeah, and it's not just waiting in the queues. We're getting in, we're playing, we're leveling.
So I always like to go back with these shows. Where does this all start? Because I feel like we've talked about it very briefly there with We Can Confirm and 1UP and all that stuff, but like you used to be one of us. But that feels like a lifetime ago for us, let alone you.
It does feel like a long time
ago. So like
ago.
where does it start that you want to get into games, period?
So I'll just say where it started with games first. Like my parents were not interested in me having video games as a kid. It was a uphill climb, and I think when we were maybe 9 years old, they finally let us get a Nintendo Entertainment System, and then they played it. Like the first night we had it, my parents just played Mario, and then we had to go to bed. And that's an idea of where it all comes from. And then if you skip ahead, by the time I got to college, I was playing a bunch of sports games, and I was playing, I played a bunch of like JRPG games, but people who were making video games, it was like an enigma to me. I didn't know anything about it, and it wasn't until 2004. So where I was watching, I had got Metal Gear. I think it was Metal Gear Solid 2 in 2004 and Halo 2, and I was playing through them both. Jumping back and forth through the campaigns. I finally finished Halo 2, and I watched the Vidoc. It was like before it's called the Vidoc. There's this documentary, and it was a documentary about Bungie. And I still remember like what Jason, the company founder, was wearing in the Vidoc, and he was talking about like at Bungie, where these like cynical, twisted, jaded gamers, and if something doesn't capture our interest in 10 minutes, we turn it off. And I was like, oh my God, there are people like me. And they're doing this thing that I had no idea how to do, right? Like it's completely no clue. And
were you just, how old are you here? Are you aimless in terms
of? I'm 23.
Okay.
24 years old. And so I am working at at this point, it is a twice weekly newspaper in Dearborn, Michigan, writing about arts and entertainment.
Okay.
And that was my way of getting free copies of video games.
Sure.
While also covering things like the Red Hat Society of Dearborn, or getting tased by the local police for a column that I was writing. And that was the type of stuff I was doing before I eventually worked at an alt weekly like the SF Weekly here, one in Detroit. I got fired from that job.
What for?
I got fired because I was using company email to get another job.
Wow.
Yeah, that's bad. That's a bad habit. Don't
they
do
can
that.
read your emails on the company email
server.
So
that was, and then that job was Kotaku.
Oh.
And so I worked at Kotaku a long time ago before the bylines were signed, and then left that job after about a year to go to 1UP.
Wow.
And then that's, it's kind of where that was the stopping point. Yeah.
Why stop there though?
Yeah, what was the thought of the transition? Because Greg and I know tons of people, and you do as well, that have made that jump from working on the media side to work for a developer or a publisher. Was there a specific thing that pushed you in that direction?
Yeah, I mean, I was living in the Tenderloin. I had no money. I moved out here with
money's a good one.
I moved out here with all of $11,000 that I'd saved up from not paying my taxes when I was working at Kotaku. Right?
That won't blow up in your face.
And it's all handled now. I took care of it.
Yeah.
And it was, it was like, holy shit, I can't live like this. Like I actually cannot live like this. And we couldn't. Ziff Davis and I couldn't find a way to make it work. And I had met folks from a small company in Irvine called Blizzard, and I was gonna go there and talk to them about an opportunity on BattleNet. And then I knew Frankie and Brian, Frank O'Connor and Brian Gerard, who are over at 343 now, and they were like, "You're gonna go to don't come to Bungie, come here." And so I interviewed for Bungie, came up and started off just kind of writing jokes for them. About a year into.
So is that what you were hired as a writer?
Yeah,
you were punching stuff
up. I was hired to write stuff for the web, like Deej and our community folks. And back then we just called it content editor, and we worked on the website. And about a year in, we were working on Halo Reach, and the creative director for that game had a producer named Alan Murray, who now Alan he works for a publisher. I think it's like Take-Two via something called Private Division.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Alan and Marcus Lato needed someone to think about reward systems for their game, and all people really knew about me was I liked Warcraft and I liked Halo, and Alan was like, could you think about some of this stuff? And so I started off thinking about stuff for Halo Reach, and that became all the armor stuff and the supply depot and the point system and commendations, and it all started from this conversation I had with the producer who was just willing to give me a shot. And then it was start literally at the bottom, like start at the lowest level of the design ladder at Bungie and make your way up and learn from a bunch of super smart folks and make a bunch of goofy mistakes along the way. And kind of like, there's some missed zero in the credit tuning for the original Halo Reach that I still feel bad about, where it made some rank way the fuck too long, and it was because I like fat fingered a zero or something. You just have to like live with that forever because we didn't patch that game, right? We shipped it and we were done with it. And so that was the early design journey, and then the first like early period Destiny was really hard for a bunch of us because
this is before it gets announced, when it's just being worked on.
Yeah, this is just when it's just being announced. And
what year are we at right now?
We're in like 2010.
Okay.
That period of time, there's just a lot of soul searching about what the game was going to be, and you can see a bunch of that soul searching like continue to kind of manifest over Destiny's journey, right? And so around 2000, I want to say 11 or 12, I was really bored, and
why?
So you're just like working in OneNote on like feature ideas and specs that you didn't feel like were ever going to ship.
Gotcha.
And you're like, it's just like, I just want to work on stuff. Like making stuff in Halo Reach was so fun because we're like in there making stuff, working with engineers, and now we're just like writing documents all day. Like, And Jones grabbed me because he can hear it. I was pretty unhappy. And he grabbed me and said, hey, we want you to take on this raid thing. Like the designer who'd done the prototype for the raids had just left. I remember playing the prototype and be like, "This is pretty cool. I think I'm interested in this."
Okay, this piques my interest.
Yeah. Was that prototype? Did that ever make it into Destiny?
The prototype did not. No, a mechanic from the prototype did show up in later period Destiny.
Can you let us know which mechanic that was?
Yeah. So in the original prototype, there was a section where you carried a giant like heavily modified brute hammer, basically, because you're prototyping in a familiar engine, across a bridge. And so the bridge, what I wanted to do with Crota's End was make sure that there was some notes that were a callback to this like thing that we all came from, that loving that raid prototype. And so the bridge and the bridge remaster were both like descendants from that original parentage. And then in 2011 or 12, I don't recall the year at this point, we took on the raids and built the raid team, and they've made a ton of awesome stuff. And that, there was, originally, I don't know if people know this, Crota's End and King's Fall were one thing. Like they started off as like one mega concept that then we had to like split, and we had to shelve because the end of the game was about the Vex, and I was like, the raid has to be about the Vex then too. So we had this big hive thing that we wanted to do. We like paused that and then built this whole new raid that originally the writing team wanted to call the Glass Throne, but that is a toilet.
Yeah,
it's like it feels very
porcelain throne.
It feels very porcelain throne adjacent. So it's like toilet adjacent. So I was like, I think
Glass
we should.
Throne lives up to its name. Review on IGN.
Exactly. You could see the takes coming. And so we had that triangle painting that one of our concept artists did of the final space. And I was like, we're just gonna call it Vault of Glass, and that's gonna be what we're gonna do. And that turned out pretty well. And then one of the designers on the raid team came up with the lamp lighting for Crota, and we were like, oh shit, we could just have this thing here. And that the end of Crota was originally the end of this like hive raid that we never made, like that like giant thing, the giant eye in the distance or whatever that's called now. I think the Oversoul. And then the opening room of King's Fall, not the jumping puzzle, but the opening like encounter, that was an original encounter space that Brian Frank, who's now the raid lead, and I did a long time ago. And then the ogre room where you fought Fogoth was in a raid. Like we redid all these rooms, but like the original skeletons came from this raid that we never used. And there's always this like insecurity about talking about like, oh yeah, cut content or they like use this stuff up. But the reality of making games and generating ideas is a bunch of your stuff is going to be built on the bones of the ideas you didn't get to see through. And I remember the first time Jason said that to me. I was like, you're like, no way, man. You're wrong.
Watch me. Yeah, I'm going to shock the world.
I have new ideas all the time. But what happens is you end up going back to those things that you didn't get to do and being like, why didn't that work? Like, I still want to do that. Let's do that.
That's really cool.
100%.
Really long story.
No, I love it. That's all this podcast is.
Yeah.
Is a really long story.
That's the longest I've talked in a long time.
Well, you write long too. The question, right, I have is you talked about the tombstone, right?
Yeah.
Husband, father, brought the raid to the first person shooter.
Scarab Lord.
Sorry, dork. Nothing on there about Kotaku, nothing on there about 1UP. Like, how do you look back on your time in the media, right? Because again, like Andrew said, you're one of the many who have left our nest to go do it. But like for me, it's all I know. So like it's like IGN and now Kind of Funny, obviously, are such definitive parts of me.
I think for a long time, I think my answer is for a long time. After starting at Bungie, I was really insecure about the idea that I had come from media because I felt like I had not.
You press sneak fuck.
Yeah, I snuck my way in here and like I'm not as like talented or smart and I don't know how to do this stuff.
Imposter syndrome. Yeah,
complete imposter syndrome, and I think it also was for a long time early in career at Bungie. I was like I felt like I was trying to shed that. Like I was trying to it's like no like. I was in a cocoon. I'm coming out. I'm a designer butterfly now. Just love me for my new wings. Don't talk to me about what I used to be. And so there's a thing about that where you're like, I'm trying to only know this version. And I think that's like, late 20. Like I'm like in my late 20s.
Sure.
You're still like I think you're still kind of forming in a bunch of ways. And I get in my early 30s. Now I'm like, I'm like in my late 30s. Now I'm like a product that's finished. This is like it's just gonna be this. Yeah. It's gonna be this, but like older and like bigger. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so that's kind of and like less hairy. That's like that's where it's going, right? So I think I've gotten more comfortable just in my skin in general, and like more comfortable just as a human being. That I think is just a part of getting older. And so now it's just like to me it's like sedimentary layers that I think about, and I don't know that a bunch of that work holds up. Like I said earlier, I don't know that
different time, man.
Different time, very different.
All the time,
yeah,
man. How, people don't get it. You know what I mean? When they're like, now, like, oh my god, they're like, even if there's a joke of being paid for a review, but it's just like, to the point of, I remember the first review I wrote at IGN, going over to Chris Roper and being like, all right, my review's finished. And he goes, all right, publish it. And I was like, does anyone read it? Does anyone copy it? He's like, not for this. Just go. I was like, oh, okay. Like that's not how it works anymore, right?
That's not how the director's cut worked. Vanessa, could you read this again? I have draft 17. It's 18,000 words long. Could you?
Wait, was that your job? Oh no!
Vanessa read director's cut more than anyone.
Yeah.
She's just over there laughing.
Well, I think that's a testament to how far you've come, right? I mean, from getting there, imposter syndrome, right? Worrying about if you're actually going to be accepted, to now you are the voice of this game and you are the voice of this company on this front.
I don't know. You still feel the imposter syndrome, right?
Yeah,
for sure. Like it's still, I think that's just a real thing about the way we're wired. Where I don't know. I might be worried if someone didn't feel it, because like you can always do better. Like you can always try to be better at the thing that you're doing, and I think that's part of where the imposter syndrome manifests. Is this like if I was better at this, maybe I wouldn't feel this way. And so it comes from this like innate thing that we feel about like, hey, we want to get better. We want to be better humans. We're like, there's a thing I'm not as good at as I could be. How do I get better? And I think that maybe it's the cloud that creates it.
Do you feel, though, that you're more confident in your position now? Because I even think back to when I saw you on stage during the Destiny 2 reveal event, and there were so many members of the media and content creators and everybody in the audience there, and you're going up on stage talking about this big fucking 2, to where you were then, even just a couple of years ago to now. Do you feel more confident and more comfortable?
I think overall, probably a little bit more comfortable. That event was really fun. I will remember for the rest of my life a bunch of parts of that event. It was really cool, super memorable. But I think some of the confidence or comfort mirrors getting more comfortable with what we're trying to do with Destiny. Like we are we're figuring it out. We're able to settle in on the vision for the game, what we want it to be, that like awesome action MMO, single evolving world that you can play anytime, anywhere with your friends. Like, I'm going to keep saying it because now we're trying to do the thing. And so with that, I think it's not just a confidence for me. It's like the team has a direction that we can all follow together. And I think that's the thing that's awesome. Was
this idea that MMO was like a dirty term to be used around Destiny? I know that the term was shared world shooter for a long time, but was there like a reason you guys specifically wanted to embrace MMO now?
I think it was a couple things. Like sometimes if you hear the word MMO, yeah, certainly if you think back to 2000, that early period, 2010, 11, you're really thinking about WoW. And if you're thinking about WoW, you're thinking about subscriptions. And if you're thinking about subscriptions, you're already a bunch of players are like, yeah, like I'm out, like, right. And so there's like a practical business side approach to how you want to talk about a thing that I think led to like, let's like stay away from MMO. And I think another thing was, MMO games can sometimes not feel like that crisp action game that we 100%. Really want to make sure that we're delivering. And so you're like, how are those two things going to compete? And of course now we're like, we're doing both, but.
Well, now you've proven it, right? I mean, that's the thing. 5 years now, people understand what Destiny is, how it plays, how it feels, how it is that. But I remember what you're talking about. I remember when, and I know I'm beating dead horse, but DC Universe coming to PS3, and it was, so how are you going to do an MMO on a console? What does that mean? Like, it was, I remember their messaging of it being like, well, no, it is action. You are doing the moves in the thing. It isn't, like click, 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 and it's happening. You're actually making something. But again, it was a different industry back then. I think people were so hung up on terms. Yeah. Remember, I was talking to somebody this weekend about video games, obviously Borderlands stuff, and it was the idea of like, remember when you played the first Borderlands and people were like, it's an RPG shooter. What does that mean? What do you mean? Like, and then we'd be writing reviews, and there's RPG elements in it. And like every game is an RPG now. Everything's a skill tree. Everything is added on. But that was a different thing at breaking out of that genre constriction.
We've added RPG elements to life.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
all
exactly. Kinds of things.
You got your rings on your phone now as you walk around. Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Yeah. So, how is when does the journey shift for you, I guess behind the scenes probably, where you're taking on even more? Like, we're talking about how you got there, right? And you like you're just doing some dumb jokes, then you get just working on a raid. When are they looking at you going like, hey, do you want to like direct to?
So that the next step after the raids, so we had Vault of Glass, and there was this period where it was like December of 2013. Yeah, December of 2013. We had Vault in good shape early, where in 2013, in December, there was a play test before people went on holiday, and in my head, I didn't know how the raid was. I thought it was doing okay. I thought we were okay, but I wanted folks to play it at the studio to get some more perspective, and in my head, I was like, okay, well, if this isn't working by now, then we should kill it, like, because we shouldn't spend time on it in the new year, and the only part that wasn't working was the end, and so we refactored the ending in the early part of the year, and that meant that we could move some of the team onto the next raid, because we felt like, well, if we could do one, I think we can understand the highest level formula, and then start to do another one. So then we booted up Crota's End, and we got Crota's End up and moving, and around that time, it was spring of 2013. Yeah, it was spring of 2013, and they came and asked me if I would be interested in taking on more work to work on the first expansion set that would come out in 2015. And that project had a little bit of time. It had time, but it was in a questionable state, as they always are. Like every single time, they're questionable until they're not, and they're not arrives at different places for different projects, and so. I said, yeah, I'll take that on. I remember being like, I'm not ready for this. Right? This is
super imposter syndrome.
Yeah, you're like, God, how are we gonna do this? And then that's when I got paired up with Noseworthy, and Noseworthy and I have been working together ever since. And we started working on Taken King, and I would work on TTK during the day, and I would work on Destiny 1 at night. And so a few of us were staying longer than usual hours to play test and really look at the progression game for D1, while building up the learning base of how we would begin to evolve the game going forward in Taken King. So even before D1 came out, we were already thinking about things like 3-digit light and infusion type mechanics and other things because we'd played so much during the summer before the game came out. But basically have there's a little window there. We have kind of like 2 jobs going on. But yeah, that was the next step was now doing an expansion, like a full expansion set. Yeah.
So what does a game director do for people who are familiar with the title but don't really understand like what the role is? Like,
what would you say you do here?
It's probably a little different in every company. So for us, the game director is is responsible for setting the vision for the game, the franchise in our case with Destiny, and also responsible for then like organizing and shepherding the different leads for across the whole game. So we have like a systems director, art director. We'll have a new narrative director. We have a team, and it's about getting them all together to buy into the vision for the game, and then driving the vision for the game across all the. It's such a douchey way of saying it, but all the products. It's driving that vision throughout the year. So, for instance, this year, if it's one of the things we're trying to do is make it so all of our seasons feel connected. Like our seasons in Destiny in the past haven't felt connected, and so that's an example of the type of thing that I'm responsible for ensuring that happens. But really, I'm responsible for ensuring that we have a vision. That here's where we're trying to get to, and then helping marshal the team to make that happen. And so you're in meetings all the time. And then
that's fun.
And then
who doesn't love a good meeting?
A way it was described to me that I think is really good is it's like being the admiral of a fleet, where you're not piloting any given ship, but what you're doing is you're saying, hey, here's where we're gonna go, and then as we're building things, and think of that as the movement of the fleet, you're checking in and being like, oh yeah, you're in the mark, or like, oh you're going over there, oh you found something better, let's get the whole fleet to go where those folks are going. It's not just, by fiat, this is what I think we should do. It's like organic, and at a place like Bungie, it really is a hybrid of the meritocracy of ideas and a little bit of vision to guide those initial ideas, and then okay, how do we pad this all into place to try to make it feel cohesive?
You talk about all that and being the admiral. Why do you think it took you guys so long to get to here's the vision? Like you talked about earlier, right? Of like MMO, we're doing this thing. This is what it is. We're off on our way.
So it's a true but totally unsexy answer. Like our organizational structure was different.
Yeah.
Like the actual way the company was set up was, coming off of Taken King, you had like Noseworthy and Smith and our leads, and we've worked with the same art director for a long time, and so you had our little pocket of folks, and then there was another little pocket of folks, another little pocket of folks, and they all had different releases that they were working on, and so that's really hard to create something that's has continuity and cohesion, and so this organizational change was a really important part of it. Yeah, sure. To getting to where we're heading today.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's not about the ideas. We have a ton of folks who have incredible ideas, far better ideas than I'm gonna have. But it was about we haven't been in the place to get all that out in front of us.
Did you know that was the problem, or did you not? Is it one of those things you didn't know till you knew? Because you talk about I remember when Destiny 2 did launch, right? And again, I enjoyed it and played the hell out of it. But there was the player reaction from the hardcore fan base. There was I want more of this, less of that, blah blah to this thing. And I remember there being a rallying cry that I couldn't speak to, obviously, because I had played Destiny 1 to level cap, but never done any in-game stuff. It was how is it like this after Destiny 1?
Yeah, I think there you have this manifestation of the multiple overlapping teams and overlapping releases would be the way I would synthesize that problem statement really cleanly. And so, Destiny 2 was a project that even Mark and I joined, while that was well under construction. And so you're okay, well, what do we got? Okay. But we weren't set up organizationally to say, well, what are the cool things that are happening even in Destiny 1, year 2 or 3, and how do you leverage those things? You're oh yeah, there's trade-offs that you're making as you're doing all of this, and you're we could have this feature in this executable, but in Destiny 2 we need this feature, and we can't do that feature in this executable, blah blah blah. It's just horrible. It's horrifying, right? Sure. And so this was one of the things that ultimately folks Noseworthy and the production team felt was a real problem and wanted to take on, and I totally agree. Course. And now we're going to start to, over time, hopefully see the fruits of that. And then here's the other thing: we don't got it all figured out. You never got it all figured out. What's if there's other landmines that we're going to step in or whatever, depth charges to really
we're really going with this.
Stick with the admiral and the fleet. Yeah, but the that's going to keep happening, and we're positioned to keep keep iterating on this thing. And, Destiny is, as of the beginning of the year, it's like, it's on us.
It's just you guys now, which is horrifying and also, I imagine, incredibly liberating.
It's got some pretty awesome components to it. It is also, I think it can also be really scary. We try to be really transparent with a bunch of stuff with the team, so we're watching, daily active users and all this stuff, and it's just on screens when you walk through the studio. So you're like, ooh, what's going on today? Tuesday looks bad or whatever. And you're like, oh, like we're all looking at that data together just as a part of like going to get a Coke Zero.
Do you ever get too close to the data though? Because I would imagine, refreshing those kind of numbers all the time can kind of give you a warped perspective of how active your community at large is.
Yeah, so there's like a really slippery, dangerous slope that we talk about, which is we actually don't want to be data driven as a company. We want to be informed by data. Like there's a bunch of things that make up how we look at the health of Destiny. Or maybe people look at this for other games. I don't know, but there's your population. There's things like sentiment. It's a whole picture, right? It's not just it says that 47% of players aren't playing Strike. That's not good enough. But you're like, oh, look, people are talking a lot about, I wish strikes were more used. I'm making this up, by the way.
Of course.
I wish people were talking about, or people are talking about, strikes, this data point about strikes, and we're seeing that in player sentiment and scraping data and all word clouds and all this, sampling that we do. Oh, shit, and the population is low for strikes. And you're like, okay, well, what do we need to do? And you're like, let's drill into the incentive structure. Like, they don't want to play for 2 blues or whatever. Like, that is real.
No, that's true.
Checks out. Yeah, checks out.
And so then you start to think about okay, well, what are the changes we want to make? And then what's the behavior we're trying to create when you make those changes?
Yeah,
how do you not go mad? Like, that sounds like way too... I can't imagine making a game, period, Andrea. You know that I'm an idiot. But on top of making a game that is constantly evolving, constantly changing, you guys are in there making these switches. You're listening to this feedback. You're figuring out the engrams.
It's year 9, man. I don't know. The madness may arrive. It may be coming. It may be just over the horizon, or maybe not.
It just seems like a lot to juggle between the incredibly complex progression mechanics built into the world of Destiny 2, balanced with this really deep lore system that some of the fans have really dug into. And obviously, you guys released the Grimoire book earlier this year. Do you guys ever have these conversations, or maybe you come to blows in your team about what's going to be sacrificed, a mechanic or a lore item?
Yeah, we talk a lot about the. Sorry, I'm just laughing because I was thinking about how Bungie's evolved when you said that. Like, do you guys ever come to blows about what's going to be sacrificed? I was just talking to an engineer last week about how the language of sacrifice has evolved at Bungie. So 12 or so years ago, it was like, listen, you're gonna have to pick a baby. You have to shoot a baby. And you're like 12 years ago, you're like, oh, that's fine. And then it was like, okay, well, now you've got to choose a puppy. You're like, okay. And you're like, no, can we just have it be like a feature? Yeah. Just pick a feature that you would like to go forward with, because you're like, it just has changed, right? You're like, I don't want to think about shooting puppies. No one wants to think about shooting puppies.
No, of course not.
So to get to your question, that economy and the trade-offs is maybe the most contentious thing that we talk about, because as the game's footprint continues to grow, you're like, it cannot grow infinitely in a bunch of ways. Like, I think right now, I'm making these numbers up. This is totally fake. But there are probably hundreds of thousands of words in the lore that are in the game right now. Like, that's a lot of words. Mm-hmm. Like, 3 years from now, is it going to be hundreds and thousands of words more? Or are we going to figure out, are we going to have to think about something else? Or are we going to have to move things out or make more bucks, or I don't know, but that simple thing about text, about the expanding footprint of text, is nothing compared to the complexity of the expanding footprint of the game. And so we spend a lot of time, and are spending a lot of time, talking about this footprint, this ever growing footprint that we have with Destiny 2. And Destiny 2 is a big ass download. I think we did a thing this year to try to begin to reduce the size of the download, but if I do not recall if this is exactly how it works. At one point, though, and this may be what we're shipping, but at one point it was, to shrink the disk size, you must re-download the disk size. And you're like,
that doesn't make sense.
That cannot be written about in a director's cut. I do not know how to explain that. It's 85 now. You have to re-download it, and it'll be 75. You're like,
wait, what?
Okay. So that like the economy and that the trade-offs that we have to make. This is a real problem for like a real problem for us, and a major thing that we keep talking about.
Is that something that you guys are actively working on with the ever forward march towards an all digital future? Or is that something that you guys, as developers of a very large game that has this big digital footprint, are concerned for your player base on?
Oh yeah, we are concerned both for our player base and for our like development, like our development team health and quality. Like making a build. How long does it take for a designer and artist to make a change and for us to ship that change to a player? That like time is much longer than we want it to be. It's much longer than our players want it to be. And some of that's a function of that like expanding complexity. And so it's all part of it. It's all part of this, like, when we talk about where we want to get Destiny 2 and that like long vision that you keep stretching toward, it's all about, a bunch of this is about how are we going to get to a place where the Destiny that we know and love is going to continue to be around and be in our lives.
I think it's interesting that you bring that up because I had a conversation with the Google Stadia team at PAX West about things like that. Obviously, Destiny 2 is doing this big partnership with Stadia in November. And what they had said was a big feature set that developers are excited about is this idea that you don't have to push a patch to Stadia and have players download it. When Bungie puts a patch in for Destiny 2, Stadia players don't have to download anything. It's just automatically
the cloud,
there.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that cloud computer?
Is that one of the reasons why you guys were excited about Stadia?
I think that the technology is exciting, but I think a bunch of it too is it like fits in that vision, like that, like play it anytime, anywhere with your friends. Like we wanted to do cross save to get it so you like. Greg could eventually,
come back, Greg.
Go to.
We're working on it. In October, we're gonna do a let's
He could make
play.
his way to the personal computing platform if you wanted to.
I'm not doing that.
A big PC player possibility over
I'll
there.
use the Stadia. All right, the computer's in the cloud where it belongs. I don't need it looking at me.
In addition to like the interesting things that like cloud provides, it's also just about does this align with what we're trying to do with Destiny, and that like we're trying to look at a bunch of our decisions through that lens. Like, is this right for the vision for the game?
I know every game director, creative director, someone who's overseeing a game, right? It becomes all-encompassing of their lives. I know that Brian Intihar guy, right? Like that's how it was for Spider-Man, right?
My best friend, Brian Intihar.
Yeah, exactly. But when he crosses the finish line and ships the game, there's at least some downtime and then probably pre-production on something else and yada, yada, yada. Do you feel like Destiny defines you? Is like that what you're, because like you can't do anything, right? Like you can't, Brian can tweet and obviously he's going to get a Spider-Man question in there occasionally. You do anything and it's got to just be about this game, right?
Well, I think so. I think some of that's the, prison that I've built for myself. Like at some point, there was some tweet, last year around an earnings call, and our ex was, there was a word that was used. It was like disappointment or something like that. And I thought, we had a gentle response, and I thought that was the moment where it was like no longer my Twitter account, right? It's not like you don't really care what I have to say about Endgame, do you? You don't. Doesn't really matter to you. You're here for like the one thing. Yeah. And so it is kind of like the like I've like built a prison around myself that prevents me from talking about a bunch of other stuff. I'm also afraid to. So like if I'm like, hey, I just started, I'm gonna have to pick a show. I'm not gonna. Oh, I've watched it already. So it's like, but if I was like, oh, I've never seen Sopranos. I'm just starting it out. People are gonna ruin it for me. Yeah, guaranteed. It's gonna be ruined. So I'm like, I'm ruining this for you, like you ruined Destiny. Yeah, exactly.
No,
like,
really? People are terrible.
Yeah, and so I was like, yeah, I'm just not gonna tell anyone what I'm doing. Like they're like, yeah, I'm just gonna I'll just use it this way. The defining property of it is an interesting one. I think that for a bunch of folks working on Destiny, it's a game they've been working on for a long time, and so I hope that for folks on the team, you're finding them new fun stuff to work on at Bungie, and but for right now, I'm okay with the black hooded sweatshirt of responsible for a bunch of Destiny. I'll wear that sweatshirt.
You wear it with pride,
for sure.
Is it exhausting though? Like, do you have time and brain capacity to think of other things, or is it literally like you're on the plane today and you're like, oh man, I really should figure out this for this raid or whatever?
No. I think I'm getting better at balancing my brain.
Yeah.
And I still spend a lot of time thinking about Destiny it's still like I don't know where people have most of their ideas. I think a lot of times it's like doing something downtime where you're like, oh, I'm mowing the lawn, or I'm like washing dishes or whatever. And that's when you have ideas. And a bunch of the ideas are still, to me, Destiny ideas, which says, I think it's a good place for me, as a human. And I hope, for a bunch of our team, it's still a good place for them too.
In your director's cut, you mentioned specifically about the team being overworked and how some things you guys had to move around because you decided that the work-life balance at the studio was off. Is that something that, universally people at the studio were like, yes, we need to do this? Or were some people having that creative push being like, I want to keep working? Because it's been an interesting thing that I've talked to several game developers about, and it seems like people are pretty split. Some game devs are like, I only want to work on this during regular normal hours, and others are like, I can't stop working. I just want to keep working all the time. And it's a really tough conversation, I think, for people on the outside, for consumers looking in to be able to balance that there's creatives that feel both ways.
Yeah, I've had a bunch of conversations with folks that I would describe as like earlier in career, and they're like, why are people telling me not to work? I moved my apartment to be 3 blocks from Bungie when I was at the apex of like, I'm working hard. Because I was like, I just want to be walking distance. I can always go in. I can always get stuff done. And I was obsessed. Like I was one of those two types of creative person. It was I just want to keep working on this thing. I love this thing. I'm like, when I was working on the raids, I was like, I believe I was put on the planet to do this. Like I had that kind of purpose in my head around like, you just couldn't pull me off of it. You just wild horses couldn't drive me away from that. I think we have to figure out a way to accommodate both. And also like, I wasn't like living healthily. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't like, I was not taking good care of myself. It actually is really good to get other stimulus other stimuli, I think plural. Like it's important to like be well-rounded as well. And that maybe that is not going to manifest for some folks until later on. I'm experiencing a bunch of stuff that I think, folks experience, younger usually than where I'm at. But I think those things are making me a more well-rounded person and are going to make me a better person to work with. So it's really there's no good answer to your question because on one hand you don't want to pour water on someone's passion, but on the other hand you also don't want that like passionate fire to be the thing that burns them out. And so you got to figure out what that looks like.
I feel like when we talk about devs getting overworked, right, and all the systems that come with it and the problems that come with it, one of them, it seems to be, and please correct me if I'm wrong because obviously you know better than me, but optically from the outside it seems the difference of being forced to do it, like there's a mandate from the company, or putting it on yourself. But then if you put it on yourself, getting 5 years in, and suddenly it's the thought process that it is the work making you do it. It isn't you doing it by choice anymore. I always talk about like when I started at IGN, right? Like I'd go to the bars with Damon and then I'd be like, all right, I'm going to go back to the office and capture WWE. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I just want to. I want to get all these wrestler entrances done. I'm excited to play the game. But it was like, that's a dumb thing to do. Why didn't I go home and sleep?
Yeah. I don't have any good answer other than the passion flame equivalent. Yeah, because it's hard to find the line, and I think for us the company mandated crunch or things like that. Like we really do try to avoid that.
Of course,
we are not as good at planning as we want to be, and I think we can always be better at it. But there's also value in like the burst of hard work that finishes a thing. Sure. Finishes a milestone or finishes an important deadline or finishes and gets the game to our players, into our players' hands. And that like there can be a real unifying element to that as well. And so again, it's like kind of based on your team, your culture that you have at your studio, and based on what you're doing for your game. Destiny's a game. You said the opening of your question referencing Brian was about like, oh, some downtime. And I laughed. Because I was like, oh, some downtime.
What is that? What is this downtime you speak of?
I slipped off after the director's cut for a week to rest, on a beach somewhere in the world, and then I'm back. Right? Like you're like, I'm gone for a week and I'm back because we got more to do. And so I think figuring out, we talk about this a lot at Bungie. Like, what's the rhythm we want to construct for a game that's always on, like it's always there. It's we want it to be a thing that you can come home to, and like the bar that's always open, but that doesn't serve alcoholic drinks, right? Because we have kids who play. It's T for teen.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest thing gamers don't understand? Like, that's always the interesting line we walk with, like, Kind of Funny Games Daily or Gamescast, where we're talking about this, but I've never worked there. I don't know any of this stuff.
So, what is it? I'll get to an answer, but I'm going to ask back. Like, what is it that we want to understand about the way that entertainment's created? Like, do we really want to know what the Russo brothers went through to make Endgame, or do we really want to know what Kevin Feige's work-life balance is like, or do we want to just enjoy
the cinema magic of it all?
Enjoy the results, because sometimes if you know how if you learn how the sausage is made, you're like, I don't think that I like this anymore. But you're like, no, like experiencing the art for the sake of experiencing the art, like that. I guess my question back is like, how much do we as as humans in this culture want to know about what goes into something?
I think we're just in this era of ever-growing transparency and authenticity that really kind of kickstarted with the rise of vlogging on YouTube, right? This idea of like these people speaking directly to their audience on the other side of the screen, and how that's manifested over the last like decade and a half. And now people want to be involved in everything. They want to see all the behind the scenes. They want to see the Vidocs. They want to read the manifesto that is the director's cut, right? Like they can't soak up enough information about the thing that they love. But I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think it's for even the vast majority of consumers and players that are out there. I think most of them are very happy to just consume the final product and never even know that you exist as a person, sadly.
No, that's great. That's awesome. I'm totally fine with that. Yeah. The keep going.
I was just saying, like, it's this idea that there is this community out there that can't get enough access, that would love to come and tour the studio and see all the concept drawings and see every little thing that left the cutting room floor, and like want to soak up all of that. But I think the vast majority of players are happy just to play a really kick-ass game at the end of the day and have that experience that they can have either on their own or with their friends. And if they get to learn something about Bungie, I think they're like, cool, but I do think that there's always going to be that loud, small audience that is always like, give me more. So I don't know if that's ever going to go away.
Oh, it's not a small audience with Destiny. Like we like our fans will consume every piece of content we can create forever. They will always be faster than us. They will always, like, the first day, if there's some stat, like the first day a Destiny release comes out and its first like N hours, there's already more playtime on the game than we've spent on it. Like, Jesus. It's like the first day people are like, no, the community's already outplayed us. Like, they've played it more than all of our testing combined, all of our automated testing, all of our human testing, all of it. Like, you're like, oh, it's not this. But you're like, oh, it's been 20 minutes. They've passed us. And so back to your question though, like the how much access? What was the?
What do gamers don't understand? What do you think the number one thing they don't understand is about making a game, being on your side of the industry?
I think one of the things that they don't understand is the confluence of difficult technologies that makes these things come together. Like assembling a build, like you would think, just like I would think.
Execute.
Press a button. make the fun build. Give me a fun build of the game. Where's the press the fun build button?
Yeah.
It's not press the fun build button at Bungie. It is, well, would you like a release or a profile build? Did you know what a release or a profile build was? I sure as hell didn't when I started. Oh, cool. Of those, do you have a 5-digit build number? Do you have a build number? What do you mean a build number? Well, no, it's like as it builds. Once a build's valid, we like it has a number on it. You're like, what? So if I'm just trying to play the game for fun at my desk, and this is like 2007, Luke is like, wait, so how the fuck do I look at Halo 3? I just want to play. They're like, oh yeah, you need to get you need to prop a build, and you're like, I need a grown up. And so I think there's this maybe it's like, hey, like a bunch of the stuff that you think would be really easy, and oh my gosh, bless other game developers, like it might be there. Remember, I only know the one place, right? Like I've just been with this in this one 12-year long relationship, and so I don't know what like it might totally be at Insomniac. Brian might have a fun button. We don't. And so that might be one of the things is like a bunch of the things that sound easy are way harder. And goofily enough, some stuff that can sound really hard is sometimes way easier than you think. Yeah.
Like what?
Oh God, I can't give you any example because if I give the wrong example, an engineer,
someone who worked really hard, will be like, "Fuck you."
An engineer will be like, "I can't believe you said that was easy," and you're like, "Oh God." And so, but we
could go for a hard example then, right?
Well, making so for instance, with the way that we. Building a weapon, I think, is much harder than people realize because of all of the tuning variables that our weapons team puts into the game. Whether it's things like the effects, the audio, like that stuff's all kind of standard. But each gun that our team builds, like they like hand tune each weapon, and so they're like playing with it, recoil angle, like they're like diffing it against other guns. Like, have we made a hand cannon that feels this way before? You're like, no. You're like, okay, cool. Right? But that's really hard because over time, you're consuming all the space. And so you're like, well, what the hell? Why does Kindle Orchid feel exactly the same as, another 140? Austringer, it does not feel exactly the same because that's what our team's trying to prevent. And like looking at things through that lens is really complicated and really hard versus, just stamping a bunch of guns out and putting perks on them and then doing custom art and things like that. So,
well, the guns are probably the most iconic part about the combat of Destiny. Like it's like this identity, right? You get to see it front and center in the gameplay. I talk about all the time how unique the guns are in the game. Do you have like a favorite gun that you've worked on or that you like to play with?
So
you have to kill one of your babies.
No, yeah, right.
Shoot one of your puppies.
So it's always scary because the favorite question. So here's my logic as I'm thinking about your question. Well, I could tell people the truth and talk about what my favorite weapons are, but then they may believe that we make changes to make them better or whatever because that's what I like the best. And so then my next thought is,
well, what if we talk about like a D1 gun then?
Well, but I'll just finish my thought and then I will give you some semblance of an answer. My next thought is then like, what if I just lie? And I'm like, it's auto rifles. They're my favorite, which is not the case. So my favorite weapon archetype stems all the way back to Halo 1. Halo 1, the Halo 1 pistol, which I love, the 3-shot kill. I thought it was awesome. That was the shooter that I cut a bunch of my teeth on, and so I think there's something really iconic and unique about running around in Destiny with a giant hand cannon. I can look at a screen immediately and see if someone's carrying a big old hand cannon that I'm like, that's Destiny, and so I think there's something pretty cool about that. The fantasy of that, like the lone gun person, with the 6 to 14 shooter, in their one hand is awesome. And so, for me emotionally, I think the hand cannons have been a favorite of mine.
Well, speaking of a favorite of mine, let's talk about the people who make this show happen, like everyone on patreon.com/kindafunny, where you can get each and every episode of We Have Cool Friends ad-free. All right, it's time to enter the friend zone. This, of course, is where people over on patreon.com/kindafunny have written in with questions for you, Luke. However, we're also adding the What's Good friend zone over here, right, Andrea?
Yeah, I've got a couple from the What's Good Guardians.
Shout out to the Guardians.
I'm wearing my new What's Good Guardians Volume 2 shirt that my friend Solid Snake Ocelot customized for me. As you can see, it's all hunters. Shout out to all the hunters out there.
That's me. What?
No, you're not a hunter?
Well, actually, true story. I play all of them. I play all one.
Like a true Destiny addict.
Each one, pretty much equally. I monitor the playtime and it'll switch seasonally. So.
This is the reason I don't have the platinum. I couldn't go through the trees of all of them.
That's why I'm a real Destiny player. I have the platinum. No, but thank you, Barrett. Thanks, Barrett.
Whatever. I bet you don't have your Solstice gear.
It's true.
See, I've got the glowies and you don't. Okay. This is kind of a fun one from a gentleman on my clan named Regiment 13. He says, so we've heard the legendary story of Lenny James, the voice of Shax, and his incredible unreleased Shax spin on Shakespeare's "But soft, what light through yonder window breaks." But are there any favorite stories of your own connected to Destiny characters and the incredible talent that you've amassed over the years? P.S. Special shout out to Lance Reddick and his Destiny weekends on Twitter.
That's too bad that his was a Lance shout out. Just because I went to Comic-Con a few years ago. I have no idea when this was. It was sometime in the last 3 years, and it was Lance and I doing a thing together. I was hosting some panel, and then Lance and I and some other folks were doing a signing, and he was he's just the most pleasant man. He's so awesome. And I remember the first time meeting him, and it was like, Lieutenant Daniels from The Wire. That's so cool. And then it was when he told me he's like since put all this on the internet, but it was like that he's a Warlock player, not a Titan player. That's like probably one of the cooler moments.
Yeah.
For at least of meeting the voice talent.
Andrew Rowe wrote into the friend zone on Patreon and said, "What would you say is the unique thing that makes you smile when you are at work?" Which I thought was a lovely question.
It's a lovely earnest question. So you don't want to give like the infinite Coke Zero is nice. You know,
man, you really like Coke Zero, huh?
I do. Yeah, I'm trying to get a sponsorship.
Gotcha. We call them CZs around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, or you either get a DC or a CZ.
Wow.
I got a H2O, but that's what everybody else around here says.
Wow, is that because it's like you have to hide the labels, or?
No, it's because Nick's weird.
Okay.
And Nick wants to seem like he's young, but he's really old.
Yeah. I've been told officially that I'm not allowed to use the word lit.
Oh,
like it's just it's not for people of my generation.
In a text or a Slack the other day, Barrett used Liddy, and I had to text another person to see if he was fucking with me. I was like, is that a real thing?
No, it's not real.
It is.
No, it is.
What?
Yeah. It was me and Roger McCorney both texted Greg at separate times in the same day, Liddy.
Well, Roger's the one I reached out to. I'm like, you tell me straight.
It's like Stan. I don't understand this thing with Stan either.
Stan is an
remember the
old
Stan
thing,
music
though.
video?
I know, but like using it in a different way, right?
Because
Like
you're obsessed.
people,
Like you stand Destiny for sure.
Yeah.
well, of course, yeah. But I've never actually used it in a sentence,
Sure.
or
I
on
just
a
did.
tweet or
I'm
anything.
young.
Yeah, I would have to be educated on the standing of
Okay.
things. So something that makes me smile every day when I come to work. I think it's like the concept art team. Truly, like I saw a thing this last week that Mike Zach, who's our art director, and I talked about probably like 2 months ago. I was like, hey, here's this idea for a thing. It'd be cool, a way to promote a thing, and blah. And he's like, okay, well, let me take it to the concept artist. And then one of our concept artists was like, oh, it sounds really cool. And then the concept artists are like, the way I've described it to Mike is they're like the Omega level mutants of creatives, because they are like wholly able to close their eyes, and where us normal humans just see like the back of our eyelids. They're like, a world, and you're like, okay, cool, and you're like, oh, you can kind of be imaginative, and I can I can see a cool world, but can I draw it? No, I can't. So there are these the concept team. So when I get to see stuff from our concept team, it's just incredible joy every time, because even whether it's like right, or you're like, I wish it was different, or whatever, so you're just like, this is just someone who's infinite levels of talent. And they have the ability, to when normal people close their eyes, they see their eyelids, and they see something that they can then put on a piece of paper or digital paper or whatever. It's, you're just like, this is amazing.
That's awesome.
Concept team, concept art.
Got it.
Concept art.
Got it.
Nice. Okay, I've got another one from Endorphins. You've referenced your love for World of Warcraft and how you want Destiny to embrace its MMORPG aspects. One of the only games that competes for my time like Destiny is Diablo 3. Have you looked at what Josh Moscarita and the team did with Reaper of Souls expansions, Loot 2.0, Seasons, and the continually improving endgame of Diablo 3?
Yeah, we actually, fun fact, so Josh used to work with Noseworthy long ago. And so many years ago, we actually brought up a bunch of the folks from Diablo. I don't recall exactly when it was, but we brought a bunch of them up to the studio, and we talked about stuff with those folks. I think Diablo and Destiny have like different goals as games. They both strive to create communities. I think in slightly different ways. Our philosophy around community creation is about constructing mountains and building mountain climbers out of our players. And I think Diablo has a different philosophy there, where I'm not going to try to say what I think their philosophy is, but ours is really about creating cool challenges that we put in front of players, that they get to go up, summit these awesome challenges, come down from the mountain, and then people are like, ooh, you've been climbing. I would like to go with you. And so that's kind of how we think about it. There's a bunch of cool stuff that games like Diablo do. We've looked at a bunch of those things. In our many years on Destiny.
Okay.
It's a good question.
Good job, Guardians. Colton writes in to patreon.com/kindoffunny and says, what is your lowest moment and your most proud moment of your Destiny career? Thanks for the transparency. Love and respect, Hart.
I think the proudest moment of my career, although I genuinely hate that word. I hate the word proud.
Don't be ashamed of it.
Well, it's just like I think if you tell someone you're proud of them,
It sounds like you're their dad.
It's implying a state that I don't think is appropriate. So a thing that the teams created that I look at really fondly, I think would probably be, just like, from I think the first raid that we released was pretty cool. I actually I didn't get to see any of it get played. Whenever that was, it was like a week after launch. So it's like next week or something. My father actually had a heart attack.
Oh wow.
The day before the raid launched, and so I was back in Michigan. He's like totally fine.
Okay, good.
But like I didn't get to experience any of it, and I don't know what happened at the studio that day. But I remember logging in the night that it came out, and people were still raiding and like tuning in on some random Twitch stream, like just like random, and a group was talking about they said something like, This is like a World of Warcraft raid in a shooter, and I was like, it really is. So I think for me, when I think about that purpose and feeling like you're put on the earth to do a thing, that was a moment that I'm pretty happy with when I look at my career. I think the lowest period is for sure outside of the 6-week honeymoon with D2, and that period for me lasted for about a year, I think, of looking at the game and what was happening with it, and Mark and I were working on some different stuff at that point, and not feeling like your work is unfinished is a really bad feeling. Sure. And so I would say, that period after the game came out and we really felt like our work was unfinished was a low point. And I think if there's anything that people have taken away from that period and the way that we turned things around with Forsaken, the way that we've kind of gathered ourselves up this year going forward, it's to finish what we started, the metaphorical never again tattoo Mark and I and a bunch of folks from the team have on us to not set the game adrift like that again. But that was that period about a year plus. I think if you ask my wife, she would say that was the lowest period. I mean, that was come home,
beaten.
Come home, immediately lock self in office and emerge from office to go to bed. It was a pretty shitty time. And, people have shitty times like that in their lives. I'm not special in any way, shape, or form. And it comes from many different reasons. And it's even a little whiny for me to say it was about making a video game, because at the end of the day, I still get to make a video game. And so that's a pretty fucking awesome thing.
How did you find yourself? Was it just doing the work that pulled you out of it? The shitty time?
I think it was a mix. It was a mix of like starting to get back in to do the work, but also like get some perspective. Like we talked like in the first 20 minutes, our inability to celebrate at Bungie, right? Like we're not very good at this. We're not very good at like recognizing that, the stuff we make is cool and it's unique, and we don't do a lot of back padding. And so you get far enough away from something, you can get a little bit of perspective. There's a designer on the team, to give you a totally counter example, who said after Taken King came out, I looked like just a piece of like human garbage, like wilting through the world. He said you just looked super unhappy. And I was like, really? I think I might have just been really tired, but like a year later or whatever.
I thought it looked great.
A year later, a year after Taken King or whatever, you're like, that was pretty good. I think there's just, some of it's just this, there can be this like malaise when it's all over.
Yeah.
But I think, getting back to it, really getting that purpose for ourselves and for the company. I think for me personally, it was, although it's like, it feels so self-indulgent to talk about myself. It was really thinking about why, like, what's the thing I want to create? Like, what is the thing for me that's motivating? And it's about building machines that create memories. And if you think about memories at this like fundamental level, they're almost always accompanied by a person who was there. Like, I do not remember when I beat Super Mario Brothers 3. I don't remember anything. I couldn't tell you what the final boss is, but I know my dad watched me do it because I have a picture, right? And so it's about building the memory machine, and the memories are the other people are like the glue that anchor the memory together. And I think about that from the perspective of like, well, why would I do anything then? And it's, that's what I would want to do. I'd want to build things that have human beings create memories together. And then you think about, well, where would I do that? Well, I already get to do it at a pretty cool place with like a bunch of super talented geniuses, and we get to work on a game that I really think there's nothing like it. And so that seems like a pretty good spot to get yourself back out onto the field and, get back out there again. So that was kind of the highs, the lows, and how you get back. It's a good question.
Good job, Colton.
People ask me all the time, like, why I keep coming back to Destiny, why I continue to play month after month. And it's always revolves for me around the relationships that I have around Destiny and the people that I get to play with. So I want to hear about your crew. Who are like your Destiny standbys? Who do you play with all the time? Who's like when you boot up the game, they're in your roster all the time that you're like, I know I can count on that person to hit the nightfall with me, to like run the raid for gear. Like who's your crew?
So, I don't play with people I work with, first of all, because I can be a bit of a jerk when I'm playing video games. There's a little bit of raid nerd raging that happens.
Don't look at me. You can't see me like this. I'm in a position of power.
Which you wouldn't think, being that I should know how they work, but I oftentimes will if the raid team does such a good job that like a bunch of the raids can come out and I'm not play tested them internally because like they're just doing their thing, they're awesome at it, and then I get like the fun of the surprise. But then my friends who also don't know, we all get the fun of like the nerd raging together about it. And so two of
what
those.
What the fuck does it want me to do?
Yeah, I can't believe we're not communicating this mechanic better. Probably less T for teen rated version of that. And so there have been a couple of folks who I've played Destiny with for years, and one of them is a guy I've played with since. I mean, we've been playing games together since 2004. Like we've been and that's a guy named his name's Ram, not his real name. And then and so we've just been playing all along, and he actually drifts in and out of Destiny as well. So he's a guy who, if there's an event in the game, like if we put any event in the game, he's playing. Like, he doesn't matter. We're like, yeah, you can come back for a nameplate. He's like, oh, we're doing it. He's like in. He loves events, right? And then the other guy is this guy Havoc, and Havoc and I have been playing Destiny together since Vault of Glass, and he was a guy we met from a message board that a bunch of folks posted on, and we sort of grabbed him and brought him into the group, and he's been awesome. And so he actually is the person I probably play games with the most. And we'll just play all kinds of bullshit. Like, we'll play Destiny. I'm sure he's going to be trying to get me to play Gears or something like that, some other games that come out. We'll jump back and forth between games. And so those two are there. A couple of my friends from growing up that we used to play Halo with, the guy Tom and Jeff, will still play together. I use their real names. And so I have like my own little crew. We've added my wife to it over the years, and she is less tolerant of my bullshit, I think, than they are. I think one thing that was said to me at some point in the not too distant past was, "You can't talk to me like that. I'm special." And you're like, "Oh shit, okay, yeah, like maybe I should chill in this Scourge of the Past raid, everyone." You know what I mean?
That's awesome. Yeah. That's fantastic. Do you have any Guardians questions?
Yes. So Whiskey Jack wants to know, Shadowkeep will bring us Armor 2.0, which will help players customize their gear to their liking. Is there any chance we'll get a Weapons 2.0 system in the future? So
we're looking at weapons overall right now. There's a long, it's like probably 2,000 words deleted scene from the director's cut. That's really looking at things like infusion and weapons and the relationships that we want players to, think of their weapons in Destiny with. We're not working on a Weapons 2.0 right now. It's the type of thing where like we could bet on that right now, but like what we really are looking at is how are we going to continue to grow build crafting, and that's kind of like the next big. That's like the frontier that we're exploring right now, and I could imagine at some point taking a look at weapons down the road, but I think that's pretty far down the road. I think there's some stuff that we're going to continue to improve about weapons. Like, I've been seeing a bunch of chatter and sentiment around like we want certain weapons from certain activities to feel more special. I think there's good feedback that I've been seeing there, but there's not an active like let's overhaul weapons. Like, nope, those are good. Let's figure out what the behavior we want players to have, like the emotion we want them to feel with their items, and figure out what the right thing to do with weapons is once we have that answer.
Final question from the friend zone comes from Scott Butterworth, who wrote into patreon.com/kindafunny and says, Luke, the community really appreciated the director's cut and the clear communication about choices and the reasons behind them. I've been playing D2 on and off since launch. I love where the game is at and where it's heading. My question is, how does it feel for you and the entire team to have the community back in your corner?
There's the one part of the answer, which it feels awesome.
Of course.
But there's this other thing, and maybe this is a very human flaw of mine, which is I try not to get too, like, the naive belief, as I just told you about, like, a year of solace, basically. The naive belief that I have is if you don't get too high on your own supply if you don't like ride the good vibes train, then you can stay off of the, like, it's going to go bad. Yeah. Yep. That's the, like, I think my belief is naive because, I think I insulate myself pretty well from the positive stuff. Like, I'm just I think Obi-Wan Kenobi in the prequel says I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe. That is how I feel about things. But it's hard to avoid the negative stuff. So for the team at large, there's a real difference in the energy that you feel at the studio when the community is excited, and when we've had different events like Whisper of the Worm and 0 Hour raid launches, all kinds of awesome moments like that. You really feel the community really energizes the studio, and for that energy, I'm grateful for that for our team, and so it feels good. But you also it's not always going to be that way.
Yeah, you can't let it go to your head.
It's gonna go up and down. It's just the nature of these things, and so if you're like I love the good feelings, then you're like opening yourself up. If you're being honest with yourself about, well, I got to take all the negatives as like lovingly as I take those, and that second thing's hard. And we're like nerdy game developers. We're not trained to deal with that. So for each human, I recommend they just figure out what's best for them. For me, it's to try to not really focus too much on the positives. Really continue to think about what's the way forward for Destiny. How are we getting closer to where we want it to go? And when the waters get choppy again, hope that you've got the right boat.
Luke, thank you for being one of our cool friends.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
No problem, anytime. And maybe it won't take us, 4 years to do it again next time. Whatever.
I still have so many more questions.
Lay one on him. Go ahead. You can go.
Oh, no. He had such a fantastic button there. We can't stop on that. No.
Of course, ladies and gentlemen, this is We Have Cool Friends. You can find Luke on the internet where he only talks about Destiny to keep you happy. So just do that. Pick up Destiny.
I just want to talk about sports and movies.
No. Get a burner account. Nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks again for coming through. Yeah, Destiny 2 out now, of course. 5th year. You got a whole bunch of different stuff coming up.
Yeah, Shadowkeep October 1st.
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
Oh, she's right there. She's nodding her head. Yeah. Vanessa's saying, yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff. Read the director's cut, 30,000 words. Have fun.
Ladies and gentlemen, this, of course, has been We Have Cool Friends. Each and every Monday, we sit down with one of our cool friends, talk about the cool stuff they're doing. It's interesting. If you're watching right now and you want to submit questions, you can go to patreon.com/kindafunny. You can submit questions for one, Andrea Renee, recording a We Have Cool Friends before she jets for LA and is a trader officially. And, of course, then next Monday, it'll be Mega Ran in town. So I'm not sure how we're airing the episodes, but those are the next two guests. Get questions in for all of them. Remember, it would help us out a lot if you went to the podcast services, subscribed, liked, left reviews. We're still a brand new show. If you're already listening to us on an MP3, I don't need to look at the camera. I can turn around. But I'd ask you to go to youtube.com/kindafunny and subscribe there, like the video there. You might I don't watch YouTube, but you have a Google account. It would just help us out if you subscribed. It's just pretty simple. It helps us out quite a bit. And until next time, it's been our pleasure to serve you.